hot summer day, I wish to present to you a work of colleagues of mine. I'm not the first developer of this, but Mehdi Fakour from the Quebec University from Canada is the main author. I'm just standing in place here. I wish to present to you his hopefully excellent work. No, I've been part of it. And it's really about how to sign the data, the design data that is being exchanged with IFC. So of course we can exchange IFC files, but you know, who's vouching for the correctness of the data? Who's vouching for the design decisions that are behind it? And the very specific question here is, can we do it on an object level? So not on a file instance level, that is, you know, just signing one file and sending it like you do perhaps with a paper plan, but really signing it on an individual object within the IFC file. So I sign only this column, but not this one, for example. So what's the significance of all of this? Well, if we look at the literature, there's quite a lot of this about this, let's say, trust into the digital data, right? To get an IFC file, you're really considering, well, how many people, how many engineers, how many designers touched this IFC file, how many contributed, even if we talk, as previous speaker has said, in the collaboration sense. If we now merge such files, who is responsible for which parts of the file? And of course, there is a certain, let's say, lack of trust, lack of transparency in our domain. There's also a certain lack of traceability. Who did what in the digital files? In a, let's say, paper-based exchanges, you at least know who sent the mail. Of course, the question of interoperability, I don't need to explain that one. Of course, and then security, integrity of this information, the professional liability behind all of this that we're doing. You can go to prison if a building collapses, so there should be somebody to point fingers to. And of course, ownership and of the intellectual property rights. If I design a building as an architect, that's also important that I can say, yes, I did it, it's signed. So, what's the research objective? Well, let's see if IFC can handle all of this, and also can we do it, you know, at the object level. All current solutions that are out there have addressed this at signing the file itself, and that's it. So I vouch for the whole file, but really is more about vouching for individual components of that file. What we are not covering is, of course, who should sign it. That's a different regulatory. When should this signing occur? Which object must be signed? Technical details of the signing. So that's everything that each domain has to figure out for themselves. We're more interested in the technology behind it, how to sign it individually. On the right-hand side, you can see a very basic process map, of course. Well, you need to input somehow. The signer certificate has to be given. Then there should be probably some sort of utility, some digital toolkit, signage toolkit that helps you sign, and you have your signed BIM model. Sounds simple. If that signed BIM model is, of course, received on the client side, let's say, this has to be also checked, right? Can you verify that the signature is valid? Can you verify that the things wasn't tampered with? Because, you know, one might change a letter or two in the file, and well, voila, you have a different model. So there's also a certain need to have the validity of the signature being found. Right. Methodology, this builds on a previous research paper from Fakour about where he conducted a lot of interviews with industry practitioners. He did an extensive literature review, but now we really went into how to achieve this need, how to translate those requirements and fulfill them using the IFC data model. So what we did, basically, hey, we searched through the IFC data, through the schema, not the data, and we found some potential containers. We compared those candidates, and we also then compared how to specify this, what we want to be achieving, using IDS and or MVD. What we have, of course, said we want to be signing, so IFC has this concept of IFC root, of identifiable objects. We want to sign the IFC root, which have a specific global ID assigned to them, have an attribute, and we can really then be certain, okay, this signature is applicable to this IFC root. We're not signing individual Cartesian points. That's not the point. Right. Well, there are some potential candidates in the IFC schema. Let's say if we are interested in the information about who signed the whole thing. There's IFC person, IFC organization, or IFC person and organization. The issuer or the certificate is, of course, also an important topic when we talk about digital signatures. Again, a person, organization, or perhaps a person and organization. We have to be certain about the certificate validity period. It's a date. We need to be certain about the signature timestamp. Again, it's a date. And what is very important, we need to have the signature value. So what has been signed, a hash or whatever concept there is that's behind it, that's, let's say, an IFC binary or an IFC text. There are different possibilities there. So from the point of view of IFC types, we're covered. Now, there are a few candidates of how to do this. There's a class, an entity in IFC called IFC approval. And as you can see on the right-hand side in the sketch, you can associate an approval to an IFC definition select. An IFC definition select can stand for an IFC object definition or an IFC property definition. So you could sign, let's say, an IFC wall, an IFC column. You could also sign an IFC property. Wait a second, property definition, property sets are below that. I correct myself. What you cannot sign, though, is an IFC relationship, so that you have assigned properties, that the property set that you've signed, that you have assigned it to the IFC wall that has these properties. That's not possible. And what's good with this IFC approval, it has a signer, it has certificate issue information that you can then assign to it with IFC approval actor relationship. There's a certain certificate validity period, signature timestamp that you can provide as an attribute on IFC approval, and the actual digital signature can be placed in, let's say, the description attribute. So sort of covered of all the requirements that we had. Another container would be an IFC owner history. Who knows what IFC owner history is? Let's see. Yeah, a few have at least looked at the schema. It's an attribute of IFC root, so even better than an IFC approval. However, there's some limitations to it. First, the benefits. We can have the signer information by, represented by the owning user. We can have certificate validity period by signature timestamp, by last modified date or end creation date. However, the limitations, of course, there's no way for us to provide digital signature metadata to the IFC owner history because it wasn't made for it, basically. It would be a bit of abusing an entity here for this purpose, but nevertheless, let's look at it. And also, it allows only one instance per IFC root. Let's say we have a young engineer that signs this column. This column is then being signed by the man doing structural analysis as well. So you've got perhaps an architect and a structural engineer both vouching for the column. But with owner history, you can only assign one. And last but not least, an IFC object reference select. Who knows about this one? Also, those that have probably implemented IFC at some point. Yes, it's a select type that allows referencing various entities and can be, it's basically a member of an IFC property reference value that can be then a member of an IFC property set, and an IFC property set can of course be assigned to an IFC object definition. So it has even less possibilities than IFC approval. We cannot assign it to an IFC property definition there. But what we can do, we can of course again assign signer certificate issue information. We can then even assign the timestamp in an IFC time series. The problem is, again, we're a bit misusing this thing because the signature value, let's say, could be stored in an IFC table, but the support in softwares is limited and it would be, let's say, stretching it a bit. But, let's say we could have multiple signature here. Right, the three definitions, which one's the best? Well, if we look at how it goes, we've got one more minute. Oh, man, okay, I think I have 3 more slides. Oh, you can look at this up in the paper. No, let's go through it. As you can see, the IFC approval column has a lot of yeses. The IFC owner history, IFC owner reference select, on the other hand side, has low to no fulfillment of the requirement. So looking in all these scenarios, like the ability to contain the metadata or support for multiple signatures as discussed previously, semantic alignment with the digital signatures technology that we're more or less all familiar with, it seems that IFC approval would be the best candidate to do it. Now, how to do it though, or how to require it in contracts and everywhere, currently there are, let's say, two main domains, two main goals, two main standards out there, IDS and MVD. And the problem with IDS and IFC approval is that this part of FASA that would be the best fit does not include IFC Rel Associates approval. So we would need to expand IDS standard in order to support it. On the other hand side, the MVD has already this approval association concept template that serves exactly this purpose. Even if you go into the documentation of the approval association, it tells that's the answer to the question that I'm asking. Also, IFC owner history is in the MVD. IFC object reference select, for example, is neither. You cannot have it in an IDS, even though you could have properties in IDS, but they explicitly state that IFC object reference select or the IFC reference property is out of scope. For MVDs, the same. It's out of scope. There isn't an MVD specifying it. So really, it seems that IFC approval would be the best fit to do it. In conclusion, theoretically, this is possible. We need to implement it. We need to test it somewhere with some software. I believe there are already some signing authorities in the in the United States of America and Canada that are already playing with it. And also the MVD approach seems more suitable for practical implementation. But yeah, in the end, we need to specify it. We need to be really, really specific on the signature topic because, of course, we're signing stuff. That's liability, that's contractual stuff. So we really need to be very explicit on all fronts. With that, those are the references if you want to read, and I thank you all for your attention.